We said there are many utilities that you can use to troubleshoot network, and we just talked a lot about TraceRT. And we're going to talk about ping, we're going to talk about NSLook, and we will talk about ipconfig. So the four tools: ipconfig, TraceRT, ping, and NSLook. TraceRT can be used with what they call switch. One of the switch you can use, actually let's go to ipconfig because ipconfig was first. Now I said let me finish that. TraceRT is traceroute, but Windows use TraceRT. But if you are using a Linux system, Linux operating system use traceroute, which is the same thing, traceroute. Now, ipconfig is a very interesting tools to use in network troubleshooting. Although TraceRT is really interesting, a lot of new network technicians like to use TraceRT to trace everything, to make sure they know where the data go. People in security, they like to do that. But ipconfig is very interesting. The reason why, if I want to do all my network configuration parameters, because when you configure the network, first you have the IP address, every device, in order to communicate with a remote network or with the internet, they must have an IP address. Those are the numbers like 192.168.1.14. And in previous presentation, I said those IP address, they compose of the network ID and the host ID. But how do you know what is the IP address of the computer you are using? The same thing. You go to the DOS command. Let's do that. And I want you to do it if you have a computer that have Windows. I want you to do that because that is not going to create trouble to your computer. The same thing, I'm going to type CMD. Right here, when you click on start, in the bottom left of the screen, you type CMD and you press enter to go to the DOS prompt. Because as I said, those network utilities, you use them in DOS prompt. Now, I'm going to do an ipconfig, but ipconfig give you a lot of information, but if you want to have all the information about all the parameters that you need to configure for a computer to work on a network, you need to put a space, a /, and you type all. And I want to take this as a note. When you do ipconfig, let me type ipconfig. I'm going to type ipconfig in space / all. So when I tell the computer I want to find the IP of this computer and I need to see all the configuration, what do you need as part of the whole configuration scheme? They have the IP address, they have the subnet mask, they have the DHCP server, they have the DNS server. All of this must be configured. Let me explain something. Earlier I was talking about, before I move forward, I want you to understand this. Earlier I was talking about dynamic and static. Dynamic are IP address that can be changed, is IP address that a computer obtains automatically from a DHCP server. And static IP address is an IP address that you have to configure manually. So in most cases, you will have to use dynamic IP, because if you have a place that have 100, 200 computers, you cannot go to each of them and configure them in the network, because you will have to enter the IP address for each computer, the subnet mask for each computer, the DHCP server for each computer, the DNS for each computer, and the default gateway for each computer. This is how much you will have to sit down and enter in each computer. It's not practical. For that reason, most places will use dynamic IP configuration, where all of those configuration, the computer will receive them automatically. As long as you connect it to a network, automatically the DHCP server, it will work together with Windows and the hardware, the network hardware you have, to configure every computer you connect to the network. So when I said IP configure or IP config space /all and I press enter, this is what the computer does for me. The computer display all the information. First, let me go. First information, I have the IP6, because now most computers they will display an IP6 and IP4, and I have the IP4. I have my default gateway. So as I explained in previous presentation, the default gateway is the number that will separate the network ID and the host ID. So right now, based on those 2355, I can say the network ID is 192.168.3 and the host ID is 111. Now, it gives me the default gateway 192.168.3.1. It gives me the DHCP server, which is the same as the gateway, and it gives me the GSP6 client version, and it gives me the DNS server. So it's provide to me all the parameters that I need to know about my network configuration. But there are other switch I can use. Let's go a little bit. I can try to go. I can go here. I'm going to put let's say IP config, and I'm going to put another switch, which is IP config release. IP config release, what it does is to release the IP address that I have currently, so I can obtain another one. So there are cases where I may have a conflict. Two computers have the same IP address. They both are going to be in conflict. There are times I may feel like the IP address is not fast enough. I want another IP address to avoid network congestion. So when I put IP address release, what I do, I give the IP address that I have, I release it back to the DHCP server. Now this computer is not online, is not connected to the network, because I release the IP address. So there are times too, I can just say, let me renew the IP address. I do IP config and / renew.
Is there a space?
I do put a space. And now with IP config renew, I don't even have to release the IP address. I can force the DHCP server to renew my IP address. Where is the DHCP server, please? The DHCP server most of the time is with your ISP provider. So now this is what it does. It automatically renew my IP address, and if I check my IP address now, I will find another IP address. So I said IP config will display all the parameters, all the configuration information about your computer. If you use it with IP config with the switch release, it will release the IP address that you have. If you use it with IP config renew, it will renew the IP address for you. So now, while I'm here, I'm going to talk about another utility. That utility is ping. If I have a computer that have a connectivity problem, that computer cannot talk to another computer on the network, or that computer cannot talk to the router, I want to figure out if there is a connection between the router and the computer, or I want to find out if there is a connection between the router and between one computer with another computer, regardless if it is in the same network or to a remote network. I can use ping. So the next segment, this is what we're going to do. We're going to practice a little lab on how to use ping to resolve issues with your network. So those type of tools are very important, because those are the tools that network technicians sit down using all day to troubleshoot issues in networking. So let's move to the next segment.